Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our LinkedIn Live event of Mosca. This is our third live event talking now about recycling and recycled content. In the first one, we've touched the packaging minimalization topic. Second was about declaration and compliance. And now we talk about how to bring that into the context of recycling and recycled content. For this subject, I have invited different experts from the industry and also from Mosca to explain what we do and what drives us into the industry. And today I like to start giving you the framework and legislation and have invited Stephan Rösgen for that subject. Stephan, welcome and join me here on the table.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Nice to have you, even on this hot summer day. Stephan, I like to have you getting the audience an introduction into the legislation framework. What is driving to use recycled content, and what is meant with recyclability? Maybe you can frame that a little bit and give us a kind of introduction from a regulatory side.
So, thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for having me, Martin, and for the Mosca company being the general manager of the Project Alliance for Pallet Strapping, which is the industry voice for the strapping band. Indeed, the PPWR goes on a broad scope, and it meets the need for future perspective and future development. I think the PPWR addresses what the future will need with regards to resource efficiency and resource effectiveness. Just to recap, maybe three numbers that I think is quite important, because we all know that 40% of a virgin plastic production goes into packaging, and 50% of paper virgin fibers goes into packaging. And even beyond that, and even more important, the world is going to need as double of the resources amount needed today in 2016. So there is a real pressure for resources, and there's a real need for resource efficiency. And this is what the PPWR addresses. I think you mentioned it, recyclability. Article 6 of the PPWR is clearly addressing recyclability for all packaging. Not just sales packaging as was before, but for transport packaging, primary production packaging as well. Meeting the needs for resource efficiency means we need to have a clear concept of how we can use recycled materials. And that is Article 7, for example, which asks for a recycled content of plastic packaging, meaning each and every plastic product in future, plastic packaging product in future, should have a certain amount, a certain percentage of recycled recyclates, and that is going to striving to implement a recyclates market. So there is demand and supply with recyclates. That is resource efficiency, of course, and that is what the future needs. However, there is some flaws in the law as well, and that is in particular true for pallet strapping, for Article 29, which asks for reusable pallet straps in a certain amount of 40% from 2030 onwards and 70% from 2035 onwards. Key point here is that pallet strapping is not open for reusability. It is not meant, is not produced for reuse, because the tension it needs to provide for road safety and load safety is not again being to implement in the very pallet straps that has been used before. But the key point for us is there is no need for reusability of pallet strapping, because we can provide the material for another life cycle, not as the same product, but as the same material. Recyclability is the term here. And recyclability means recycling of used pallet material. We're not talking about post-industrial material, but we're talking about post-consumer recyclates. And that has been provided by a key activity of the industry striving for increase of collection volumes, increase of recycling volumes. That is how the industry provides circularity, provides sustainability to the resources. We are capable to collect more, to recycle more, and to bring that into a new life as a new market for secondary raw material. I think this is where we can improve the PPWR, which, by the way, maybe let me finish with a kind of a controversial statement, which we think is quite a good law, generally speaking.
Okay, thank you for that framing. So you as Strapping Alliance, or we as Strapping Alliance, we are forcing more circularity. We are happy having circularity on our products. So meaning there is a certain need for recycled content and having it recyclable. So let me invite and welcome to the table Jesus from GCR.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Martin.
Nice having you. So you're a recycler.
Yep.
So that's exactly touching your point, which Stephan said. So you are now, your products are in favor. We all know that having recycled content will become mandatory. And we've also heard that some of your competitors stepped out of business for different reasons, but you are in. And so I think there's much more. Please give us a glimpse about your strategy, how you feel in that environment, and what are the plans of GCR?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Martin. As Stephan mentioned, we are in the middle of a paradigm shift from what has been for many years a linear business model into what is going to be a circular business model. And to force this paradigm to happen, we need legislation for sure. Otherwise, the change will not happen. So at GCR, we started this journey 25 years ago with the first small recycling plant. And we have been gaining experience and know-how since then. Recycling business is not for short-term opportunistic entrepreneurs. It's for long-term entrepreneurs. It's a business which is completely different from the virgin polymer business because it has its own particular challenges. And let me just name only one, which is sourcing. In recycling, you need to be very careful about the sourcing that you use to produce the recycled products for the different applications that are in the market. In the virgin market, you have plenty of opportunities of suppliers with exactly the same specification, the same products. In recycled market, you have variability. This is the main topic about sourcing. You have variability between country to country, between city to city, even between seasons. The scrap a community produces in summer is not the same as the community produces in winter. So the knowledge, the deep knowledge about this sourcing is really a key element, and is probably one of the reasons why some short-term entrepreneurs are failing about staying in the business for longer. The good news is that the mechanical properties, the mechanical technology is already there. So, and there's a number of technologies that are involved in the mechanical recycling. Let me name only four. Sorting. Sorting means separation of different polymers and different colors. Today, artificial intelligence has been embedded in this sorting technology. Washing, cold wash, hot wash, different additives. This has been progressing a lot in the last few years. Filtration, of course. What we receive in a recycling plant is dirty, contains impurities. We need to filter it very well to allow high performance applications to use a growing amount of recycled material. And of course, deodorization. For the same reason, as I mentioned, all what we receive post-consumer has contained food chemicals that, of course, is degrading and is creating a smell that we need to remove. So look at these four different technologies, very different one from another one, and companies like GCR, we are integrating these different technologies into a stream value technology that is mechanical recycling. So once we know about the purpose of this recyclability. Now, once we know about the existing technology in the market, what has been the approach of GCR to this recycling market? It's based on three pillars, mostly: quality, scale, and transparency. Quality, because our aspiration is to produce recycled material as close as possible to virgin material. So the time when recycled material was really poor, was only downgrading, or was only used for reduce the cost of articles, I think is over. There are many applications, very high demanding applications, that they need the right quality to comply with the legislation. Scale, we will need a few million tons of good quality recycled material in the 3, 4, 5 years from now to comply with the legislation. You know that the average size of a recycling facility in Europe today is between 20,000 and 30,000 tons. This is too small to provide the scale that supports the right cost position and the right investment in the most advanced technologies. And transparency is the last pillar. Carbon footprint data, sustainability data has to be shared with the value chain as transparent as possible to avoid greenwashing and to gain trust in the value chain. And let me use the last minute also to focus on something which is usually not in the discussion, because recyclability is always connected with sustainability. But I think it's important to mention the geopolitical implications of sustainability on recyclability. In Europe, we know we are short of fossil fuels and energy. In the last 5 years, 6 supply-demand crises impacting Europe big time because we are not really strong in this area. The good news is that we are sitting on top of millions of tons of scrap material that we should forget. We should move between calling this scrap and calling it feedstock. We are sitting on top of a lot of renewable carbon feedstock. We have the technology to convert this into really high quality materials, and this can be the fuel that where Europe could build its own resilience and protection against future energy problems that for sure will come in the near future.
Thank you, Jesus. I'd like to come back to one point you mentioned, and I'd like to ask you a question. You said you were very clear about your ambition, so you'll stay in the market. This is what we like as a plastics converter. But I'd like to ask you about volume. So you said, yeah, there are volumes needed. So how about being a little bit more specific on your plans on volume and expansion, or what do you offer actually?
Yes, our plant, the new plant that we started last year, is 1 year in the market, is a plant we built with 100,000 tons of recycling capacity of polyolefins, PCR, plus 30,000 tons of PAR, post-industrial. So in total, 130,000 tons, which in our opinion is one of the largest recycling plants in Europe under the same roof. And we have the land to expand this capacity 3 times when the need is there. So we have really the commitment to be in the market for the long term and to continue growing with the market in the near future.
Okay, this is very important to know as manufacturer, and I also like the aspects of high quality, consistency, as close as you can to come to virgin products, and the whole declaration and compliance topic you are supplying to us as customer. I'd like to thank you for that and invite Elias of our R&D team in Mosca to talk a little bit more about the conversion. So welcome, Elias.
Hello, everyone.
Elias, I'd like to explain to the audience what you do. So what you've done or actually doing with this high quality feedstock supplied, for example, by GCR. How is the conversion now to a final product, and what can customer expect? So what's the path forward? Let's open the door a little bit and give us a glimpse about the work.
Let's start like this. In my opinion, the PPWR or the aims of the PPWR to deal with plastic waste and to reduce the consumption of fossil resources is a really good one. But unfortunately, the PPWR is written way too general because every plastic packaging is different in their specific properties and in the type of processability and the final application. For example, a PP strap has high demands in quality. It needs to run reliable in the production process. It's extruded. Then we have the stretching with really high forces. And at the end of the day, it has to rely sufficient and reliable in the strapping machines with different welding technologies, such like Mosca's ultrasonic sonics technology, for example. And it's easy to claim, for a politician to claim that we as a producer has to use really high amounts of recyclates. But it's really difficult to bring them into high performance products. So what we did at Mosca is that we started to search as a front runner in the strapping industry for reliable recyclers with reliable sources. And in GCR, we find this a really good and reliable source and partner to develop a PP strap which fits Mosca high quality standards. We achieved that by bringing together the know-how of GCR as a recyclate supplier and the know-how of Mosca as a specialist in strap production and machinery production. So let me introduce to you Mosca's new gray PP plastic strap, which combines 35% of post-consumer content and well-known Mosca performance, as well as all the technical documentation you will need for PPWR. The strap will be launched. The strap you see will be launched in September, and we can supply you with this specific strap. Maybe you ask, why is it gray? So we are producing white and black. But let me explain to you, we don't need expensive white recyclates or unrecyclable black recyclates when we can use affordable and good quality gray recyclates. Gray, as I explained, is easy to sort and recycle. Gray is low in price and high in quality. Gray is for us as producer and for GCR as a recycler, gray is the most reliable and logical color to combine high amounts of post-consumer recyclate within a high-quality PP strap. At the end of the day, we all shall think in supply chains. Why shall GCR as a supplier buy expensive AI sorting technologies to sort black straps if we as a producer can offer them a good recyclable and sortable gray strap? Why shall we as producers use expensive white straps with high demands in color-sensitive solutions or applications and with not that much capacity on the market, capacity volume on the market, when gray color or the color of transport packaging is not that important than performance, reliability, and circularity. To put it all together in a nutshell, gray, we as Mosca and GCR are hacking the recycling process using gray as the most partial color for circular PP straps with really high quality.
Thank you. So that seems to be that in the R&D team of Mosca, we could convert all of this input into a physical product. We've seen that gray strap will be something what will be launched beside the PET strap, which is anyhow fulfilling that requirements and documentations. And so my question is, So what is is there any limitation on that so far, and what's the initial step with the gray strap?
No, there is no limitation. We have checked all important mechanical and performance quality aspects in our technical center. We did endurance tests, we did weldability tests, and the performance of the gray strap with 35% post-consumer material included, they are comparable to well-known Mosca high-quality standard level straps in black and white. Yeah.
Sounds very interesting. So thank you, Elias, for that. I like to shift to Bernard Merkx, giving a different view on that subject. Welcome, Bernard.
Very good morning, Martin.
Nice having you.
Yes.
And so having you now in a different function here, talking more about recyclers and the recycling business in that particular case, I'd like to ask you to give us a more view on the sustainability. So beside any physical product, what bring recycled materials and recyclability to plastics and plastics final product like the strap, what Elias said?
I think it's already good to know that I started plastic recycling in 1987 as one of the early birds in the European market, where already we worked with returnable products which were used up to 100% recycled content in the early days. What we see now and now more important, sustainability of course is much wider than recycling. Very important, and I think it was also mentioned by Jesus and by Stephan, design is getting more critical. Mm-hmm. So design is a big issue because if you design properly, you of course have much more chance to keep it very high in the value chain. And what is maybe not so known by a lot of people, and even the biggest opponents of studies of, let's say, LCAs or this kind of stuff, they cannot get around the fact that if you use recycled plastic to replace new plastic or virgin plastic, you save between 50 to up to 100% CO2 emissions. And this is, I think, especially when you look at one of the hotter days in Germany these days. I come from the Netherlands. I was born below sea level, so you mean melting icebergs is a topic in my country. Yeah, I live at -1 meter already. So we have to be careful. And I think also it was mentioned before, there is so much waste unused in Europe. And Europe, from a geopolitical view, we are so dependent. And we are sitting on the resources and we don't use them. So I've been on a lot of international podia, and I always start telling now, hey, let's harvest resources instead of collecting waste. Yeah, we are still not circular. The technologies are there. I think if you look, I was in Valencia last week, and we were discussing bottle to bottle, drinking bottles, but tray to tray. And of course, we are discussing also in the project alliance with you, strap to strap. So you only can go circular when you start to collect the products you put in the market, and you put them in. You can only use them as high as possible if the quality is right. Yeah, and I think this is correct. The message which has to come across. But in the end, we need the whole value chain to be part of that. Yeah, and even if sometimes some products are a little bit more expensive, just start doing it. And we are discussing in the Brussels bubble, of course, this CO2 savings you can make when using recyclate. There's no economic value on it. This is something the politicians need to look at, because this is the way we can create much more pooling market than what we see today.
Yeah, but I think it's also quite important what Jesus said. So we need the whole value chain supplying data around, and that needs to end up. So we just can calculate the CO2 emissions if we have those input from the recycling stream. Yep. Same as what Elias said, having everything together. So being equipped to launch that product also from the Mosca side, it requires a lot of data to bring together, and also to express that in the right way. So you're saying, I liked the CO2 emissions. Thank you for that kind of point. Quite important for some of the customers of us. The large ones, they like to see that value. And
not only
do you see
in the end, I think everybody's looking at it. I think you have a group of customers or consumers who actually look at these kind of products. They're willing to buy bio vegetables, for example, because they know it's better. Mm-hmm. But you have to look broader. So, I mean, as a company, and it needs time to adapt to new recipes. It's also a learning process, and I think that's important. But look, for example, at what we do with wind energy, with solar panels, with all these kind of things. That's also part of sustainability. Water consumption, all the recyclers I know, let's say the top ones, they're all cleaning up their processing water. When I started in '87, that was not the case. Yeah? So you see a huge transition of that industry. Yeah, and yes, there are some victims, but I think the heroes are not as much in the media as they should be.
Yeah.
We can do so much with today's technology.
Yeah, hope we can lift those jointly together. And this is what we like to do with circularity, to provide a strap. So to convert all of our portfolio into a strap portfolio, which is recyclable, so able to enter the recycling loop again, and to have recycled content to even reinforce that and growing that business.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to know, because we are talking here mainly about the packaging and packaging waste regulation, there is more. You got the eco-design regulation, you got the automotive regulation, you got the building construction regulation. All these markets will go into a similar transition. And then you get also into contact with partners which you never met before, but who have the same journey, which can speed up some of those processes. So I think it's a challenging time of the market, especially with all the other things happening around us. But there's no other way. Yeah, we have to go that way.
Agree. And I think we also need to mention that in UK, the plastic packaging tax will be shifting from PIR to PCR as well. So there will be in 1st of April next year also a slight change, which will have also a technical impact for most of the products, or a tax impact if you don't comply to that. That's also something which is very important to get that listed and to have that included.
Yeah, but we also see with this kind of instruments that it also attracts, let's say, imports, which get certifications which are not always true. So there is a big need for more transparency with your supply chain. There has been abuse. And there are 2 countries, Spain and the UK, and we have reports of abuse. Certificates which are promising something else than what they are supplying. So this is of course at the attention of the authorities, but they haven't solved it yet. So there is a big need also, I think, from the industry to work close with partners, and don't see it as supplier and customer. Work as partners. Long time, I think Jesus is right. If you go into this market, you're in for long.
Yeah.
And you have to work with customers or partners, if you want, who are with you for long.
Yeah.
So you can invest in each other. And then you can jointly go through that journey. And I think that's the most sustainable thing you can do.
Right. I think we as plastics processors, we need to think along the value chain, or not the value chain linear, but in circular, and have everybody participating on that. That's a very important thing. On the other hand, we've also seen regulation pushing for that. So the first draft from France, sourcing recycled materials around the gravimetric center point of France with 1,500 kilometers is, to me, a very good first move, strengthening also that industry in Europe. So let's see how that conversion will be now realized. Looking more into August 12th, how this will be done with the local EPRs as well. Thank you so much for joining that. I'd like to welcome all of the others here to the table, and like to motivate the audience for closing to ask questions for all of them here. We're happy to receive your question for the individual topics and to answer them right here on the table. Maybe I can start with a question from myself. And that's exactly to the last point. It's to Jesus. Jesus, so you talked also about feedstocks, right? Where to source those. So my question is, where are you sourcing your feedstocks from? I mean, you process them obviously in Spain, but where do you source?
Yeah, we are sourcing our scrap, our feedstock, mainly from Europe. So let's say 1,500 kilometers around our plant in south of Barcelona. But as I have mentioned before, the sourcing of feedstock for recycling activities is one of the critical points on the success of a recycle business. And there is a huge variability, and this is the topic. So our intention, of course, is always sourcing as close as possible to our plan, and I think we are managing that to a big extent. But we must admit that not all the qualities we need for certain applications are available in this range. So we are also open to sourcing some specific qualities from a little bit farther away regions like the rest of the Mediterranean area or UK, again, for these on-purpose qualities for high-demanding applications, for example, like the strapping product that Mosca is promoting.
Thank you. There's a question coming more for Elias. So Elias, it fits pretty well what Jesus said about the performance. So we need a certain polymer performance, talking as plastics engineers. So the question of the audience is, how is the gray strap performing so far compared to a white strap in the same dimensions?
It's performing completely the same. As I explained earlier, we tested it on different levels in our technical center. We tested it in endurance tests on the strapping machine, on different strapping machines with different welding technologies, and we had no issues with this kind of strap. The only difference is the color and that it is more sustainable because we used high quality post-consumer recyclates from an expert in plastics recycling, such as GCR.
Thank you. Here comes a question for Stephan. Stephan, you were talking about the Strapping Alliance. So a group of European strap manufacturers. Indeed. And we're touching very briefly about the targets and the goals. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that one of the goals is improving, or let's say going more circular. Can you go more in depth about that subject?
Yes, thanks for that question, because I think it's really important. We saw the examples that were introduced by Jesus and by Elias today, and that is very impressive because it shows that the industry is ready. Yeah, recyclability is not a nice to have, it is a must have. And that is what the industry project alliance, or the voice of the pallet strapping industry, is already devoted and happy to do, to start collecting more material that has been brought to the market. We are in discussions with the waste management industry, with waste management companies all around Europe to find more concepts or to implement more concepts on how to collect materials separately, not just commingled, the one or the other, but separately from the different materials, looking to different plastic materials like PP or PET, and increase these separate collected materials means that will enable recycling and recycling volumes to be increased to meet the needs for the industry to produce new material, secondary raw material to produce new material, to save the resources this globe can provide to a global development. And that is where the Project Alliance is really striving to bring circularity to the table.
Great. That's a great approach. And I like to have a last question from myself to Bernard. Is there today any kind of bottleneck to scale PCR in PP strapping?
I think the biggest bottleneck overall is that waste management is very linear. Mm-hmm. So it's not a material flow which has the direct attention of the waste management companies, which means that often it goes astray. So I think it's time for the industry to take that in their own hands and organize maybe on a European scale as kind of EPR scheme altogether to collect these straps. There are a few examples. For example, in Belgium, there is by law, it is collected. Mm-hmm. But that's the only example I know out of the 27. Yeah. So there is still a lot of work to do. There's room for improvement. Reason for that is that a lot of business-to-business waste streams, if you want, have not been really in the focus of the political arena. It has been the consumer's product, so the salad packaging and this kind of thing which you use in your kitchen, and strapping is not always there. Strapping is much more in a business-to-business environment. Yeah. So yes, there are collection schemes. Yes, there are things being collected, but there is a lot of room for improvement. And we know that from a technical point of view, you can go strap to strap. You can use the recyclate back into the next generation of straps, which of course is the aim for circularity.
Yeah. How do you see that others, I mean, GCR is a very good example as supplier providing all the data sheets and everything needed, but do you see also others providing that data? Is that something what's at least one of the advantages of European suppliers?
I think if you look at the top, let's say 100, 150 European recyclers, all of them will give you data sheets and all these kind of things, certificates and all the other ones. Then there is a second group of, let's say, another 500 who will give you part of that. But if you ask a little bit more, you will get everything. And then there is a group, and that's the group which Jesus is mentioning, which is disappearing from the market, who has not invested in that kind of level, so they will be out of the market.
Yeah.
The main challenge is, of course, to take the right certificates. And as I said, if you are partners, you can visit each other's kitchen. You can visit each other's companies. You can look what's happening, and they can also learn from you how you process it, because it's a learning process on both sides. Yeah. And there are very good certificates, but every certificate has its own shortage.
Yeah, I got that. I'm asking more particular because we as Mosca, as the audience know, working on digital data collection and handing that data over to our customers or via our customers to bring them together and get the full picture. So this is something what we do with our digital load pass activities. And here especially we like to announce as well that one of the R&D projects we are doing is bringing that data also in the digital load pass, CO2 emissions, and also declarations and compliance. So everything what we've discussed, including packaging minimalization, so compliance to road safety, have it as a digital package that customers don't need to care, so that they are future-proof to get into the next chapter of business and where they are still able to operate in terms of legal compliance.
Yeah. I think as Mosca, you're one of the front runners in that domain. There are, of course, some attempts now in other markets to work with a digital product passport. But I think as far as you have done it so far, I think congratulations, because I have not seen it as a second one.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And even with that last words and being a little bit emotional that this is the last event of the legislation-driven pillars we like to present to you. We like to thank you for listening to all of those events we've done. We like to get a feedback from your side, and we hope to continue that with other topics pretty soon. You've noticed that we are working on different subjects, and thank you so much. And if you are interested, please chime in and contact us in Mosca, and please let's stay in touch and talk about end of line and also circularity of end of line.